Welcome to the Money Mile Podcast. I am your host, Justin Waller, and I'm happy you are here. We like to think of Money Mile as standing at the corner of triathlon and personal finance. We believe that age group triathletes are the lifeblood of our sport, and we want to shine the light on some good people doing great things in our sport. Later today, we'll be joined by Carly and Tyler of Organic Coaching, and they are leaders of an online training and triathlon community. They are a husband and wife duo, co-owners and coaches in this successful coaching business. Stick around to hear more about their story after we discuss our questions on course. The question I received recently that I'd like to address today was, what strategies do you recommend for maximizing retirement savings over the long term? This was also related to someone that loves doing what they're doing, but in true triathlete fashion, they wanted to do the best they could with what they have, and they want to have more options and flexibility down the road. Please keep in mind that this is for educational purposes only, and this is not a recommendation for you, as I don't know you from a hot rock. I am hoping to provide an educational framework here that will help you make forward progress. I will do my best to talk to two types of folks within this response. The first are business owners, and the second are employees. Typically, for most business owners, they do a great job of running and growing their businesses, but they have a lot of difficulty with the thought of scaling back, no longer running the business, or someday selling the business. Growing the business itself and running the business is what they do. They put all their money back into the business and grow it, and unfortunately, this creates some problems over time. Many business owners also have the majority of their net worth and all of their financial resources tied up in their business. So I have two suggestions for business owners here. First, grow your resources outside of your business. This does not mean you have to be a serial entrepreneur with 10 different businesses, but you should not have all of your resources tied up in one business either. The key word here is diversification. Just like an Uber biker can't finish a triathlon without a swim and a run, you need to diversify your financial resources here. For many business owners, this could look like setting up a retirement plan through their business, and you can also invest in other businesses inside your retirement plan if that's what you wanted to do. Maybe you decide you want to own rental property or be a part owner in other local businesses or be a silent partner in other businesses. There are lots of ways to approach it, but you need to make sure that you don't have all of your resources tied up in your primary business endeavor. I am a big fan of long-term diversified stock portfolios that are relatively easy to manage and do not require you to run another business. Second, prepare for a transition of the business itself. At some point, you are not going to want to be the primary person running that business, or you will want to run it differently. You might want to sell the business or scale back, or for some other reason, not be able to continue any longer. If you have a business that only you can run, you may not actually own a business. You might want to consider yourself as owning a job. If you can prepare that business for your eventual transition to something else by systematizing your business, consider turning the job you own into a business someone else could either run themselves or that you could lead others to run the business. You might be a manager or just an owner of the business and train enough other people to run it, but either moving on up or moving on out. This will give you much more flexibility and options down the road. You don't have to do it tomorrow, but putting yourself on a trajectory that you can step away from the business will give you more flexibility down the road. Worst case scenario, heaven forbid, if you got hit by a bus, your clients and customers would still be able to get what they need from your business, and your business doesn't evaporate with you. As business owners, many of us are also employees of the same business, and you can think of yourself as wearing two different hats. We've just been wearing our business owner hat, and now for those folks, we can switch hats and look at the employee hat. If you are a business owner, this employee section may also likely apply to you. So here goes. If you are working for an organization, large or small, but do not have an ownership interest in the organization, you are an employee. There is nothing wrong with being an employee, but you have different things that you should be considering. Many employees will have access to an employer-sponsored retirement plan. When you hear 401k, 403b, 457, simple IRA, or SEP IRA, this is what I'm referring to. Some of these plans allow you to put money into the plan, and some of them allow for the money to go in from your employer. Regardless of what your employer does, you should consider contributing into your retirement plan. You put into these plans through salary deferrals, and this is something you can control. If your employer puts money in as well, either matching or discretionary contributions, that money may be subject to a vesting period. This means that if you have not been an employee long enough and leave the company, they might be able to keep a portion of the money they put into the plan. But what you put in is likely always yours. You should confirm this with your plan administrators or your human resources department. For most plans, you cannot access the money in these plans until you reach age 59 and a half, but some do allow access at age 55. We are going to use 401ks and 403bs as a starting point, and the maximum amount you can put into those plans via salary deferral in 2024, when I'm recording this, is $23,000. If you have reached age 50, you can contribute an additional $7,500, and the other plans have different contribution limits, so SEP IRAs and simple IRAs and all that stuff. If you are not putting money into your retirement account and want to be financially independent someday, I suggest starting here. There are lots of other things you can do, but consider starting here. The next question I get is, should I put money into the regular side of the 401k or the Roth? And this really depends on your situation and your anticipated tax strategy. And if you don't have a tax strategy, I suggest you start with the pre-tax side and work on educating yourself to better understand what your options are. You can always change course down the road. The next important aspect of this is that you should be clear on what you're holding inside your retirement plan. Your employer might give you a list of investment options, or you might need to work on this on your own. I suggest starting with diversified stock-based portfolios if you are trying to grow your wealth, and get some more advice specific to your situation. The general guideline is to contribute to your employer plan to get the maximum matching contribution if there is one. Then next to fund a Roth IRA if you are eligible, and then go back to funding your employer-sponsored plan. If you do this, you will be saving at least $30,000 per year, and you will be headed in the right direction. I do not recommend trying to time the markets or trying individual stocks, as the risks are too high for most people. Many people think, well, okay, $30,000. That's not going to make me financially independent, and they start looking for get-rich-quick types of programs, and I urge caution here. Please be careful. If you take that $30,000 per person per year and do it regularly throughout your working career, the chances are very high that you will be in a pretty decent financial position down the road. It might not be champagne and caviar living, but it's a great start. I like a simple plan that will work over time if you work the plan, over a roll of the dice that could end up losing you everything. Also, if you can't fully fund your retirement account now, start with something and consider increasing it every 6 months until you're at the maximum. And I say 6 months as an example. You could revisit it quarterly, or every time you get a raise or a promotion, you revisit that and just continue to ratchet it up. This is very similar to triathlon training in that consistency is very important. $30,000 for 1 year is not going to be that big of a deal. But if you contribute $30,000 for 10 years, now we're talking about $300,000 of just your contributions going into that plan. Can be a very meaningful piece of an overall strategy. If you want to learn more about what you can do once you have progressed beyond these initial steps, please let me know, and perhaps we can revisit this again in the future. Now, let's turn our attention to Carly and Tyler. Carly and Tyler are the husband and wife duo co-owners and coaches at a successful triathlon coaching business. So we want to learn a little bit more about how you're doing, what you're doing. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got started with this triathlon coaching business?
Yeah, good question. So we both have degrees in exercise science. I have my master's and Tyler has his bachelor's degree. After school, I would say we had a hard time finding quote unquote real jobs.
In the exercise science field.
Yeah, real jobs in exercise science field. So I worked in the running industry. Tyler worked in the bike industry, which was fabulous as triathletes. We got great hookups and all of that stuff, which was really nice. And then during that time, we were also both racing really competitively, everything from Olympic distance to Ironman. It started very organically, no pun intended, but people started to kind of take notice in our local area. And we actually both got our first few athletes. I got mine from the running store. He got his from the bike shop. Just talking to people kind of started to notice, like, how are you guys getting so fast? And like, whatever you're doing is working and that sort of thing. So it's taking our education that we had and putting it to use with our actual training. And that's kind of where it all started. And then in 2016.
Yep, 2016, the coaching just grew so much that we couldn't do both anymore. And we decided, hey, coaching's really fun. We enjoy it. Let's put all of our eggs in this basket. And we left those jobs with the sweet hookups on gear and started coaching full time.
Yep. So yeah, we started coaching in 2014. 2016, we both left our jobs and went full time.
Yep.
Wonderful. And so we are recording this in late 2024. So give or take about 8 years within the coaching framework.
Yep. 10 years total, 8 years with it being like our full-time gig.
You are also involved in some other adventures as well. You are the coordinators for a Facebook group, if I've got the name right here, Triathlon Training for Time-Crunched Triathletes. Did I get that right?
Yes.
That's perfect.
Yep. It's a tongue twister, but yes.
It's a bit of a tongue twister, so I want to make sure I got that right. So could you tell us a little bit about the community there?
So we started with our athletes, and we work primarily with time-crunched triathletes. So a lot of busy professionals and or parents and just people in general have a lot going on. It doesn't matter what phase of life you're in. It kind of started a little bit by accident and then continued to really grow and really took off in 2020.
Yep.
With everything else in the online space. But it's been really fun because, like I said, everyone is busy in their own frame of what they have going on in their life, from work, family, everything in between. And so it's been really cool to see the community kind of grow there and people being able to ask questions and friendships growing and just being able to have a place where everyone can feel together.
Yeah, and you see some really kind of amazing transformations over the years of someone just kind of finds this group, they're new to triathlon, or some runners also, they're kind of just getting into it. And then you kind of see over the years, like the progression of them, just becoming more and more involved with the sport and kind of going to bigger distances or going faster. And it's really interesting sometimes to see that, how much these people evolve as athletes over time.
Yeah. And it's also just like a good place for people to ask questions of like, I'm a mom with 3 kids. How do other moms fit training in? Or I'm a busy professional and I'm always hungry training for an Ironman. Like, what are you people eating? And like, what are your go-to snacks throughout the day that are easy to grab? All of those different areas of life. So it's been really fun.
Oh, that's great. So it sounds like that kind of came out of the COVID era and just trying to connect your own individual athletes. And now it's grown to, if I've got the numbers right, it's over 6,000 members of that Facebook community.
Yep.
That's wonderful. You've got a couple of different irons in the fire. You've got different things that you're working on these days. And so glad that you are here joining us. If we are doing this correctly, our listeners are likely out somewhere on their long, steady run. So we'll put links in the show notes to the Facebook community as well as organic coaching. So we'll make sure that they are able to connect up with you.
Perfect.
All right. So if we're looking at your trajectory and where you came from, you had mentioned that you had both reached heights athletically. Could you share with us a little bit about like your highlights athletically? What really stands out in each of your minds as the highlights for you?
Yeah. So we'll try to make this quick, but also start at the beginning a little bit. We did our first Ironman together when Tyler, again, going back to him working at the bike shop. Yeah. I worked actually a couple stores down. I got done with work. I walked in and he was assembling this beautiful tri bike. And it was like the women's top of the line at the time. And I was like, oh, I need that in my life. Like, remind you, we had done sprints in Olympics. Yep. And so, Tyler, I don't remember if you surprised me or whatnot, but
the owner of the bike shop was like, you got to buy your wife that bike. Like, like she wants that bike.
Yeah. So we ended up getting the bike. And then the following year, I felt like this literal guilt that I had such a nice bike. I was like, I logically have to do an Ironman. There's no in between there. So that next season, we signed up for our first Ironman together. We did our first 70.3 together. And we had fun training for the Ironman.
Yeah,
Like
it was a cool experience. It went well.
yeah, it went super well. The race day itself, I was third in my age group. Tyler had like, what was your run split?
Oh, I think I had, including professionals, I had like a top 25 run, which was crazy.
Yes. Remind you, we were also college students at the time. So
we had like a lot of time to train.
Summer was very free for us.
And that running, a lot of that was just really, I was so naive. It just worked out, I'll be honest. That long ago, you know what I mean? So we had a really good first Ironman. We enjoyed everything about it.
Tyler finished the race and he was like, I can't wait to do this again. I was like, I'm never doing that again. He signed up for my Ironman Mont Tremblant the next year. And then like 6-8 weeks later, I was like, okay, I'll like sign up and do it, of course.
Since we're already going, we're in college, so like budget was super important. So it was like,
we're already going to be there.
We're going to be there, so maybe I should just do it too.
Yeah, that was kind of the game plan the next year. And I ended up actually racing Eagleman 70.3 early that spring.
Which at the time
you could double qualify. So you could qualify for 70.3 World Championships and Ironman World Championships. I double qualified for both races and said yes to both. And so that was a big year. And that's when we were kind of like, ooh, we're good at this.
Like, in one sense, like we were racing decent, especially Carly. She's accomplished much more than I have. But it was also like the things we're doing, because we were making our own plans and planning our own stuff. It's like the things we're doing are working and making sense, you know?
Yeah.
We're able to maintain this training and stay healthy and also not feel like we're like overworking or getting burnt out. So we're like, this is kind of all starting to make a little bit of sense to us.
Yeah. In a nutshell, I've qualified for Kona twice, and then we've both qualified for 70.3 World Championships.
3 or 4
times. And then we've both qualified for the Xterra World Championships. But I think the coolest was in 2019. We both qualified for 70.3 World Championships and Xterra World Championships. So we got to race both of them together. So I think that overall has been like
that was a pretty fun experience. Yeah, that was a pretty cool couple of weeks.
And you did all of those races within a couple of weeks?
The way the 70.3 World Championships and Xterra World Championships worked out, yeah, they're pretty close together. I mean, like a month, essentially.
Yep.
So.
Wow. Okay.
You got to be ready to mountain bike and ready to like run fast for 70.3.
Wow. That is impressive for sure. As I understand it, Carly, your background athletically is more on the swimming side of things. Did I get that right?
Yep, exactly. So I grew up a swimmer, and then like after high school, essentially, the thought of triathlon came up for me to get back in the water, and then the challenge of
I just thought it would be cool to like do a triathlon. I mean, just a sprint. I really had no plans of that. I just thought it like, wow, that'd be like crazy to swim, bike, and run like all in one event.
The challenge of it all. But Tyler, from your end, you had more of a running base to speak of. That was your primary sport before you got into the triathlon. And then you were obviously working at a bike shop, so you had developed some cycling chops as well. Did I get that right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, I had been running and doing like 5Ks and stuff. I didn't grow up really playing any sports. So I'd been running and doing like 5Ks. I think I'd done like a half marathon and stuff. Just some running, and the idea of combining them all. And then, you know, just working at the bike shop, it was just always these customers coming in with just telling me these crazy bike splits and stuff. And it always just seemed insane to me, you know, the numbers that some of these guys in particular would throw down. So, of course, that just intrigued me more and more to be like, how can you even bike that fast and then run?
And you are located in Michigan, is that right?
Yes.
Yep, we are.
So strong athletic community there. We see lots of people performing well. I would imagine that with the coaching business, you are also working with folks remotely as well. Or can you give us a breakdown of kind of how that split is? How much is in person? How much is virtual?
Yeah, so everything is virtual that we do. Of course, we have a handful of athletes that are close and local, and so we'll see them like at the pool and around, but 99.9% of what we do is all virtual and online. But then we work with athletes literally all over the world. So yeah, lots of different countries.
The name of the coaching business is Organic Coaching. Can you tell us a little bit more about the backstory behind organic coaching? Like, how is this different than the non-GMO version, or like?
Yeah, so when we were trying to come up with a name, we wanted something kind of a little bit unique, and, you know, really the organic coaching idea really took off because it's like your body's designed to be able to do these things. You just need to train it right. So it can almost happen organically in a sense. It doesn't take anything special. It just takes putting the right pieces in the right places over time to be able to grow fitness and, be healthy and race fast if that's a goal also. And so, yeah, organic coaching, growing your athletic roots is what we came up with because it's like the athlete is there inside of all of us. I mean, I'm proof number one, I think, of anyone. If anyone would have known me before I got into endurance sports, it's like, wow, this guy can figure it out. I think it's in all of our bodies. So yeah, that was kind of the idea. Our body's designed to be able to move and do these things, and we just need to set it up with the right tools for success.
I know that success means different things to different people. How are the two of you defining success in your lives these days?
That's a good question. So I think we're both going to be pretty much on par in agreement in this. Success is really defined and it's going to be individual on each person. So the way I define success and each one of our athletes defines success is going to be a little bit different, but individual to them. And so that doesn't necessarily mean winning your age group or setting a PR by any means, but it's like, what is your own personal growth? And sometimes we have seasons where we grow as athletes in ways that we didn't necessarily expect, but you get to the end of the season and you're like, yeah, I had maybe we'll say like a 2-minute PR when I really wanted the like 10-minute PR, but I grew in all of these other ways. And now maybe I can balance life and training so much better. So we often find like our first seasons working with an athlete, if they're taking on their first like 70.3 or Ironman, they're very training focused because they're nervous about race day. They're like, I can't miss a workout. Like they're very, very training focused and all their eggs are in this training basket. But then as we get into that second season, then it's really fun because then we start to see that they can balance life and training a little bit more. And they're like, I've learned it's okay if I miss one workout a week or, a couple workouts here and there. Where they're like, the first season, I would have freaked out because I think it's going to be over if I miss one long ride. But then it's really fun to see that success over those years of like what that means, but really just chasing like that personal growth. And like I said, sometimes it's different than what you anticipated or what you thought you were going to get out of it. But yeah, just kind of continuing to chase those goals and personal growth, whether it's in sport or life.
And I think one thing Carly said here that just reminds me one thing just about coaching that I love is she mentioned that first year athlete, second year. One thing I love when I'm working with an athlete multiple years, it's like the first year, we're just trying to figure things out, get the race done for the most part. Then the second year, it's like start to figure out and when can I like take a risk in a race to push or not push. And then the third or fourth year, they're kind of like a well-oiled machine that they're really good at understanding their body and how it reacts to stressors. So they can first in training navigate within the session if something's going sideways to come out and not feel defeated or burnt. And then in racing, they kind of get a better idea of knowing when can I take a risk and when can't I. They have that confidence and there's that kind of that skill and experience built.
So for the two of you personally, obviously you're doing a lot of work with your athletes. I am also kind of curious about the two of you as people. When you think about defining success for the two of you, you're obviously building a successful triathlon business, your triathlon coaching business, you're running an online community. Do you have particular views of success that you're looking forward to or particular aspirations that might be that next step for the two of you?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So it's interesting, I think, for us. So we're a little bit of this outside of the box dynamic duo that we work together, we do life together. It's one of those things where we definitely have like those personal sports goals, right? Where it's like, of course, there's always that PR. It's like, I always tell my athletes the story of my first 70.3. I went 5 hours and 15 minutes and I was like, I can break 5 hours. That'll be so easy. It's only shaving off 15 minutes.
It was my first time. I mean, geez, I didn't even really know what was going on.
Yeah, like yeah, exactly. It took me 5 years to break 5 hours. I got so close multiple times. I was so far so many times. But it's also like sticking with those goals you have. And sometimes it takes 5 years to get there when you think it should be overnight success. For us, I think it's that combination of, yes, of course, athletic goals of always chasing that next PR and that sort of thing. But then also, I think success, we've kind of gotten there, and I'll say life for us, and the fact of we get to work from home, we get to work together. our days are never the same. And that works well for us, where one day you wake up and you're like, this is what I'm going to do today. But then we get 5 emails come in and you're like, actually, I'm going to take care of those 5 things first. But I think in everyday life, the fact that we get to work from home and work together has kind of been a huge success in our personal lives.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, not to divert too far from triathlon, but I think it makes us a very strong couple who definitely we're on the same page about everything because we're together 24/7. So I think that's one part of just when Carly says like success, I would say that's been a big part of success for us that I would have never imagined when we, started this journey long ago. That's come out of it that I think has been really positive and good for us.
That's fantastic. Some couples could really do well at that, and there are the majority of us. If we spent 24 hours a day with our spouse, it could be a bit of a challenge. So kudos to you that y'all do that. Love my wife dearly. Our personal time is very important to us. So we each get to do our own things, and everybody's got to find their own balance. I'm really glad to hear that you have found yours in a way that allows you to collaborate together.
Yeah, totally. And I think part of that is, we've been mostly together 24/7 since we were married or pretty close. So it's kind of been like that from the beginning. If it was maybe really separate and then together, right, then maybe it'd be a
different story.
Maybe we wouldn't be talking about that right now.
Who knows? Well, I'm glad we're here talking today. Obviously, you've spent the last 10 years coaching athletes, so you've seen lots of different things. And one of the aspects of the Money Mile community is that we recognize that the triathlon is one part, but we also want to be mindful of the money side of things. We know that triathlon can be an expensive hobby. I was curious of what tips or suggestions you might have for other triathletes that are looking to make sure they get the best bang for their buck from a financial perspective.
I'll go first and then you say what you have to say.
It's still teamwork.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is.
You'll need a captain on a team.
So I will say we work with a lot of 70.3 and Ironman athletes, and especially kind of like what Tyler mentioned a little bit ago. We start with them their first season, and then we typically grow with them for a few seasons at least. And so that first season, I'm really a big fan of like, use what you have available. They're like, I have a decent road bike. I'm like, cool, use it. Make sure you enjoy the sport before you go invest in a very expensive tri bike. So I'm first and foremost, I'm always like, use what you have available, especially if you're like getting your feet wet, and start there. And then we're like, okay, cool. You love the sport. Now here's the next investment that I would make. And it's one of those things where like, yes, a power meter on the bike is like the gold standard, but can you buy a heart rate monitor and a Garmin watch? Let's start there. That will more than get you through your first race, your first goals, and then we can build upon gear that way. And then the other thing is also going to be just like the races that you pick, staying close to home, obviously, local races. It doesn't have to be an Ironman branded race. Like there's lots of great 70.3 and even full Ironman distance races that are, I'll say off brand. That's not non-Ironman brand that are still great local options for people at a way more affordable.
And then for me, I think there's a lot of stuff with starting with the sport and all the things you need. And I think Carly really hit on the key main parts there of, just don't go super deep all in the beginning. Get the essentials, get what you need. Make sure, you're understanding and enjoying the process. I think one thing that's cool about triathlon is there's tons of gear, tons of cool stuff, always another thing. But those things necessarily aren't going to make you faster or better. It's the bits and pieces day in and day out of training that are going to make you the best. We kind of mentioned our first Ironman. While I say I did have that amazing run, I had a pretty okay bike. Probably it's one reason I was able to run so well is because I really underbiked because I was so nervous. But I remember, doesn't matter how well I biked, I remember getting passed by people with bikes substantially less expensive than me, and then never seen those people on the marathon. And actually my brother was there, and after the race he made it a point to tell me about all the cheaper bikes of people that got off before me that outbiked me in my super bike. I just think piggybacking off of what Carly said for sure.
That's great. And it's always nice to have people in our lives that keep us grounded. It sounds like your brother does that.
Oh yeah, he was like, you had a great run, but just so you know, your $8,000 bike did nothing.
I hope you enjoyed that run.
Yes.
Oh, very good. Anything else there from the financial perspective? Anything that you think might be beneficial for folks to think about?
And then I think just in general, like obviously staying consistent with your training.
Yeah.
You signed up for this big race, you have this big goal, staying as consistent you can with training. And then of course, we're going to be a little biased on the coaching option as well. Not everyone needs a coach by any means, depending on your goals and where you're starting and your fitness background and all of those things. But of course, we're big fans and believe that a coach is going to help you get from point A to B a whole lot quicker and more efficient. And so if you have this big goal, we're putting all of our eggs in one basket, and we're really focusing on that, then definitely investing in a coach is going to help get you there and show up on race day confident and ready to rock and roll. Because we don't want you to show up on race day and not have the race that you wanted, essentially. So
That absolutely makes sense to me. And recognizing that different people, they're on their own path and their destination might be different. It's been their lifelong dream to finish a sprint triathlon, and that's the only thing they're ever going to do with it. Great. Maybe you don't have to spend, tens of thousands of dollars and do all the other stuff. You can check the box on a sprint triathlon for a relatively economical price point. If you decide that, over a 10-year career, you want a podium at an Ironman in an age group, like, okay, that's going to take a bit more of an investment, but you've got to start somewhere, and working your way up through that certainly makes sense. And I would absolutely echo the thought about having a coach and working with a coach. When you reach a point where there are blind spots here, I don't know what I don't know. I've found personally that a coach can help a lot from that perspective and just help you do better with what you've got. I've been a coached athlete for years and really enjoy having that aspect of the coach. The other part for me is honestly is that I don't have to come up with my own workouts anymore. That always took a bunch of mental energy that took me away from the other areas of my life. And partnering with a coach and collaborating with them allowed me to be able to say, okay, great, it's Monday morning. What's on the dock?
what do I do?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't have to make it up on my own as I go.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's something sometimes people they kind of envision coaching is for like elite or fast. But really, we work with a lot of athletes and our assistant coaches. It's a lot of people who they want to compete, they want to stay healthy, and they want the pieces to fit into their life. They don't want to wake up and think, what do I do? Okay, I have this much time now. What do I do with this time? What do I do for the session? It's like, hey, we're training for these types of events or these are goals. And actually, we have some athletes that don't even race. They just train just because
They enjoy the training.
they enjoy the
aspect.
training aspect. And just with life, it's hard to get away for a couple of days to compete. So we're there filling in the pieces and just making training fit in their life and making sure we're, balancing that enjoyable versus when it's time to go type of mentality, no matter what their goals are, whether it's finish a sprint, finish an Ironman, or finish on a podium in a 70.3,
Yeah, there are lots of different options out there. I'm glad to hear that you're supportive of all of those options. You mentioned you work with athletes that only train. I personally would find that very difficult. I've got to have a race on the schedule in order for me to do the training that I need to do. Otherwise, any number of other things pop up. But kudos to them. If they can pull it off, I actually prefer the training more than the racing myself. I know I've got to have a race on the calendar to keep me accountable to that sort of thing. So
Yeah, well, actually, the one in particular for me, he's raced quite a bit, but he hasn't raced since 2019 just because his job has been insane and he's a competitive guy. And, he wants to be able to go all in when he races. So we just keep training and hopefully someday his job won't be so demanding and kind of back to how racing was. But yeah, no, he totally loves the process and it's awesome. He's very intrinsically motivated.
that's great. And to each their own. Everybody gets to have their own journey. And Tyler, I'm glad to hear that you're supportive of those other scenarios as well. You don't have to be gunning for the podium every year in order to work with Tyler and Carly in organic coaching. If you just want to have a well-rounded lifestyle, you can do that as well.
Totally.
What would you consider to be the most underrated aspect of triathlons, or maybe something that you think triathletes should know more about?
Recovery, for sure. We're typically very good at going hard and more. Typically, triathletes are type A, very good at that, very good at pushing ourselves, right? So just the whole aspect of recovery, from maybe that's easy recovery runs, swim bike runs, easy sessions within your training block, but to also like sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night. If you're peaking for a big race, can we squeeze out 9 hours a night? And so even just like any way we can decompress in that sense. And sometimes it also is like, hey, we have to get better at fueling within that 30 to 45-minute window after your workout. So there's all these different little aspects of recovery, but really kind of honing in on those. And if we can focus at least on one area, we'll say sleep or nutrition, those are going to be like the two biggest ones to tackle, then that is huge for athletes. But it's definitely one of the things that I always say there's lots of fourth disciplines in triathlon. Recovery should be one of them to help athletes because you're going to get your best bang for your buck, any sense, with training hard, but also resting hard and recovering as well.
Nope. I think that what you said, I mean, just summing up recovery and, I know we're coaches, so I keep coming back to this, but I think that's something that sometimes athletes have a hard time embracing as recovery because a lot of times, especially us triathletes, we're really driven, we're really motivated. And oftentimes we see success in many things we do just by doing it more and harder. And that's not quite the way our body works with sports. So that recovery is a big one.
I appreciate you highlighting that. And if I may just kind of jump into that a little bit, one of the things that I've noticed is with the technology out there, it seems like the resources like the Garmin watches and all that stuff can tell you like, okay, are you appropriately recovered? Or maybe, hey, you might want to take it easy today. That threshold test today might not be the day for that. So do you incorporate that sort of thing in the coaching work that you do? Or do you find that those resources are accurate in what they're doing? Or is it completely, out in the wind, just wild guess? And maybe you can just share with us your thoughts.
Yeah, so I think they're good tools to help us steer the ship, but I don't think they should be the one making the final decision. All of these things like Garmin with body battery, Whoop recovery score, HRV on your phone, all of those, I think they can give insight to you and what's going on, but I would use them just to steer the ship. I find that sometimes if we really start to rely too much on these things and let them steer things, that oftentimes we get out of touch with our own body and what our own personal needs are. So, and I will say in my early days as an athlete, I let that steer the ship too much for me and kind of got down rabbit holes. I mean, I've personally been there, but yeah, I think they're good. They're good at directing, but I wouldn't let them be the ruler.
Indicators, but not the final say.
Yeah,
exactly. We need to look inward and be like, because we'll have athletes be like, oh, my Garmin says I shouldn't do X, Y, and Z today. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, that's probably correct. They're feeling sick. They're feeling run down. And I'm like, yep, that's a really good indicator you're getting sick. Let's adjust. We're going to take either a rest day or an easy day or something along those lines. But other times it's like, well, how do you actually feel? And they're like, fine, I feel great. And I'm like, okay, then we're going to go with how you're actually feeling and do the scheduled workout. So it's a good thing to be aware of. But yeah, don't let it be the end all be all.
Perfect. From your perspective, has there been a turning point for either of you regarding your training? And if so, I'm kind of curious of what that looked like for you personally.
Yeah, I mean, mine for sure. My turning point was back in those early days of training. I just could not get myself out of bed in the morning and would try to do it after a long day at work. And I would be tired. I wouldn't be able to do it. Or actually, most likely one would be the day just ran long. Things got out of control and I don't have enough time to do my session. And it just never worked out that way for me to be able to get in my training and get the fitness I needed, which my first 70.3 really rung true for me in that aspect. So I would say the big turning point for me was setting that alarm, getting up, getting it done. The first 10 minutes never feel great, but once you get through that warm up, for me, I feel pretty fluid and the rest of the session is doable at that point.
That's great. What is it that you would like for the world to most know about you and your journey where you're at today?
I think that it's not a linear path. It's not all ups, there's downs, there's just level with sometimes, especially I think for us that are working athletes, we have jobs, family, and we're trying to train, we're trying to balance a lot. And sometimes something has to give a little and we have to back off on training, or other times things just aren't coming together the way we want. And that's the way the path goes. Like Carly kind of mentioned earlier, talking about, kind of like reflecting on that year and how things went. It's not always the plan we want, but if we adjust to where we are in life and with our body, we can constantly find success in our training and racing and life.
Carly, any thoughts from your end?
Yeah, I would say just piggybacking off of Tyler a little bit and going back to what you said, like, how do you define success? And just kind of having each one of us as athletes and individuals just kind of chasing our own goals, going after them, going after big, scary goals and not being afraid of the process and embracing it And knowing, like Tyler said, there's ups and downs and there's no linear path as much as we want there to be one to get us there in this super seamless way, but just putting in the work. And I think really enjoying the process along the way is one of the most important things that I can stress to athletes and even ourselves. Like, we've been in sport for a very long time and still love it now as much as when we first started. And part of that is truly enjoying the process and like having those goals, enjoying the process, getting there, and knowing there's lots of ups and downs along the way.
Yep, totally.
That's wonderful. I very much appreciate y'all taking the time to join us here with the Money Mile community and share your thoughts and experiences. We will have links to organic coaching as well as to the Facebook group in our show notes. Carly, Tyler, thank you again so much for your time. I wish you all of the best in your future endeavors, and we'll look forward to chatting again in the future, hopefully at some point soon.
Thank you for having us, and it was wonderful chatting today.
Thanks again to Carly and Tyler for coming on the show. If you haven't heard of Carly and Tyler or their business, Organic Coaching, I highly recommend you checking it out. I have thoroughly enjoyed the conversation with them. They're super fun to chat with, and they definitely know their stuff. As I understand it, they actually have 4 assistant coaches as well as a nutritionist as part of Organic Coaching. So if you are interested in learning more about that, I recommend you check that out. I know I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation with them, and I hope it was valuable for you to get some insights from 2 high-performing triathlete coaches. I hope this episode of Money Mile has been valuable for you. If it was, please share the podcast with your training buddies and friends, and keep in mind that if you work out, everything else will too. And we'll look forward to talking with you next time on Money Mile.